Good Shabbos, everyone. I want to thank the rabbi for allowing me to speak this morning, to give him a little break. First of all, I'd like to wish a mazal tov to Ivy and the Finley family on Ivy becoming a bat mitzvah, as well as to Marjorie and Saul Salson in honor of their 50th wedding anniversary. I would also like to dedicate this short Devar Torah in memory of Rabbi Groner, whose yortzeit we will observe this week as a congregation this Monday evening and Tuesday. The 19th century Hasidic Rabbi Chanukh of Alexander taught, once there was a challenged man who each morning had a difficult time remembering where he had left his clothes the night before. So one day he got a pencil and a piece of paper and wrote down where he was placing each article of clothing. He placed the note next to his bed and thought to himself, "Tomorrow I will have no problem finding my clothes." He awoke the next morning, quite pleased with himself, took the note and followed it to the letter, finding each piece of clothing exactly where he had set it down. Within a short period of time, he was fully dressed. Suddenly, he was frightened with a terrible thought. "But where am I?" he cried. "Where in the world am I?" And so, taught Chanukh of Alexander, so it is with us. The divine plan has given us the ability to reflect about where we are in our lives, not with regard to physical location, but in relation to who we want to be and how we want to live in our relationship with God, with others, and with ourselves. Often, however, we are focused on our career objectives and on what we have to do, but we often forget to ask, who am I really? And why am I here? A few years ago, the Huffington Post published an article entitled, "Are you living your resume or your eulogy?" The author asks us to consider how we want to define success in our lives. Will we judge our success based on money or power, or based on how many random acts of kindness we perform during the course of a regular week? Are we living our lives according to what really matters to us? And if not, can we change? Think about the moments that come closest to defining how you really want to live. The ones that will never make it to your resume. Maybe those are the moments in all of our lives we should look more closely at, the ones we should strive for. There was a YouTube video of a blind man sitting on the sidewalk outside of a busy shopping area. He had a can in front of him and a cardboard sign. The sign said, "I am blind, please help me." Most people walked past him and avoided him. Some dropped a few coins in his can. A woman stopped in front of him. She took his cardboard sign and wrote something on the other side. Meanwhile, he was feeling her shoes, the only way he could know her. She put the cardboard sign back and went about her way. Suddenly, people no longer walked by him. Coins and dollar bills literally poured into his can until it was overflowing. At the end of the day, the woman came back and stood in front of the man. Again, he felt her shoes. He asked, "What did you write on the sign?" She said, "The same thing you wrote. I just used different words." Then the camera went to the sign. She had written, "This is a beautiful day and I can't see it." So why did this woman stop and do what she did, anonymously and on behalf of a total stranger? She was on her way to do something, but she was totally present and saw another human being who was vulnerable, and she responded. It was one of those kinds of moments that define who we are. We have a word for such moments in our tradition, moments we stand up and do what we are suddenly and unexpectedly called to do. We call them Hineni moments. Sometimes saying Hineni is about responding directly to God, but sometimes it is about being present to respond to the needs of other people in our lives, whether it's a total stranger or those closest to us. Mostly, it is about knowing who we are and being in touch with the God within us. Again, Hineni is not a simple response related to our physical presence. It means, here I am in every sense, fully present and ready to do what you ask God, the God above or the God within. The word Hineni appears only a few times in the Torah. In most cases, God calls out to a person in a pivotal moment, and their response is an act of total focus, a complete readiness to encounter and respond to the divine. What is significant about a Hineni moment is not that God is reaching out to us, but rather that we have declared that we are available to God and ready to act in a godly manner. Imagine the profound awareness of God, which we can only surmise Avraham Avinu lived. The Torah says God called his name. Imagine not that Abraham actually heard God's voice, but he was totally present and open to God, that he knew at the core of his being that God was there and wanted his attention. That is a Hineni moment. From a literary perspective, Hineni tells the reader that something is about to happen. Something is about to change. A few weeks ago in Parashat Vayeshev, when Joseph responds, his response is not to God, but to the call of his father. Joseph's brothers are in Shechem tending their father's flock. Jacob requests that Joseph go to Shechem to see about the well-being of his brothers. Joseph responds, Hineni, here I am to do what you ask, Father. We know that Joseph's brothers hated him, and not without good reason. Why would Jacob send his favorite son on a mission that was nearly impossible, not to mention potentially very dangerous? And why did Joseph respond with Hineni? Jacob's request did not require a response of any kind. It was a call for action, because even though Joseph was aware of the potential danger, he was enthusiastic about carrying out his father's request. And so it should be when God calls upon us, the God in heaven or the God within. We cannot know God's plan for us, yet there are ways that each of us can bring divinely inspired Hineni into our lives. Sharpen your senses, and you'll be there for those moments of focus when you're fully present for another human being. Those are moments that spark actions that will certainly result in a sense of personal growth, even though they will never show, once again, on your resume. Hineni moments can come when we least expect them. Sometimes they come in moments to challenge your personal health or the health or happiness of those you love. It is then when many feel God's presence in their lives. You pray to deepen your compassion and strengthen your ability to come through the pain and help lighten the burden of others. I am surely not suggesting that a dark moment in our lives will be our opportunity to connect with God, though it often is. But there are so many opportunities. When a Hineni moment comes, it is unpredictable. The key is to open to the possibility and availability to respond. Many times you see friends whom you have not seen in some time, and they will say, you haven't changed a bit. And while you know it's a compliment, it misses the point. I read a sermon several years ago by Rabbi Joseph Braver, and in his sermon, he wondered whether "you have changed a bit" is a compliment at all. If God were to look at us today, God would probably say to many of us, "You are in bad shape. You haven't changed a bit." Later in his sermon, Rabbi Braver recalled a sign that used to sit near the cash register at the checkout line in a store. Count your change before you leave. Rabbi Braver suggested that is good advice for money. It is also good spiritual advice. Let us count change on a regular basis. Let us make sure that when God sees us, we will hear, "You look great. You've changed a lot." May each of us as individual and as a community be blessed with the wisdom and insight to find a balance between doing and being. Let's not miss our lives as we live them. May we learn to live by our values, to be present and available for those Hineni moments. May we share the best of who we are with one another. And may we count our change regularly. And the next time you hear, "You haven't changed a bit," may you think, "Actually, I've changed a lot." Shabbat Shalom.